Hi friends, I hope that you are having a wonderful day today. My name is Luciano. Though I don't often get to wear this hat, I am going to place it on my head before we go any further into this video. I am a scholar of peace and conflict studies. I study violence, I study peace, I study the processes that lead to both. I have a master's degree in this study from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and I'm super excited as well as deeply sad about the fact that I get to put on this hat and talk about the topic of today's video, which is going to be rhetoric, violence, and a fairly fascinating term to me as well as to a wide range of scholars in a just confluence of linked fields known as stochastic terrorism.
So there's a term that you might not have heard before, but will unfortunately probably hear me use again, that describes what J.D. Vance and Donald Trump and their right-wing friends like Christopher Rufo and Stephen Miller are doing. It's stochastic terrorism. Stochastic terrorism is when the public demonization of a person or group of people through ideologically driven hate speech increases the likelihood that those people will be violently attacked and targeted because of those vicious claims. It's when attacks on drag queens claiming that they are grooming and sexualizing children lead to drag shows being canceled because of bomb threats. It's the right's demonization of Speaker Nancy Pelosi that leads to a deranged man breaking into her San Francisco home, searching for her so he can, quote, put her on trial, and instead bashing her husband's head in. And of course, it's what J.D. Vance has done to Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio.
What you just saw was a clip of Joy Reid discussing stochastic terrorism. Joy Reid is an MSNBC host and political commentator, and as is often the case, her explanation was considerably more succinct than the one that I am going to give you in today's video. That said, I deeply love that succinct summary of what stochastic terrorism is, and I think that if the only thing you get from this video is that particular clip, I will have more than done my job. So, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about stochastic terrorism. Broadly get a feel for the different ideas and conceptions of stochastic terrorism, all we really have to do is take a look at the first page of the Google results when someone decides to Google it. Wikipedia. Stochastic terrorism is political violence that has been instigated by hostile public rhetoric that is directed at a group or individual. Going further down, we can go ahead and see that according to Max Planck Gesellschaft, which is pronunciation that I absolutely just butchered, you can go ahead and see that at the very least, somewhat recently, the concept of stochastic terrorism was viewed as an underexamined yet growing threat to public security, and that the dictionary.com definition of it is that the public demonization of a people or group resulting in the incitement of a violent act, which is statistically probable. And just going further, you can go ahead and take a look at some of these other definitions. It is clear that we all agree more or less on what stochastic terrorism is. Some of these different results even go ahead and show why it is that someone might be interested in stochastic terror, and also say that there, or at least imply that there is a certain monopoly on stochastic terrorism that is held by the right. Understanding the concept of stochastic terrorism is important because there are real world, devastating consequences for our actions. When we speak, when we act, when we have platforms and we use those platforms to spread hatred and bigotry and fear, there are actual consequences. When we speak, if we have platforms and audiences, there can be real world consequences for the things that we say. And if we use platforms, if we take advantage of the fact that people trust us and believe in us, and we use that to fill their head with fear and with disgust and with contempt, there can be actual consequences for real world people. And it is very important that we only give power and platforms and audiences to people who deserve them. Stochastic terrorism is what happens when we give platforms and voices and these major audiences to people who do not deserve them, even if they have earned them in some way, shape, or form. Looking at an article that discusses the rise in hate crimes against Latinos. And very specifically, it talks about one of the devastating facets of the ways that rhetoric about and around immigration and Latin people in the United States, as well as Latin people from Latin America, have affected the lives of real people. I don't want to talk over this article all that much. I mostly want to show people more statistical evidence talking about the reality of stochastic terrorism and also give people a chance to go and look at this article themselves, which I will be linking in the description of this video, so that way people have the chance to make up their own mind when it comes to the topic of stochastic terrorism. That said, I do think that this is something that is very important to talk about and to be considerate of going into the election in November. The importance of understanding the concept of stochastic terrorism is that it is a succinct, simple way of grasping something that many of us are undoubtedly capable of realizing intuitively. It is not difficult for us to imagine that if someone has a platform and uses that platform to spew dangerous rhetoric all the time, and there is even one person who is likely or at least willing to engage on violence in the name of their beliefs, that they could be swayed to act violently by rhetoric. Even if that is not the person who is spewing the violent rhetoric's intentions, that is still something that could happen with a large enough platform and a violent enough message. That said, being able to succinctly describe and articulate this term and this concept is something that is very handy. It is my hope and my intention that by arming people with this vocabulary, we will be able to have more specific, more targeted, and more nuanced conversations. We are on the cusp of an incredibly important election, and sadly, every single election of the last couple of election cycles has been incredibly important. But this next election has the potential to be decisive in a staggeringly, worryingly large number of areas. So we need to be thoughtful and we need to be intelligent and compassionate when we decide who should be the people who lead our country. And when we are doing that, we need to think about the sorts of messages, the sorts of words, the sorts of rhetoric that would be employed by the people who are going to be leading us. I want you to just sort of take a beat and to think about what it would be like if your words and your rhetoric reached 1 million people. What do you think people would take away from that? What do you think people would be moved to do? Because if you reach 1 million people, odds are your messages are going to incentivize someone to do something. If someone had to take the broad strokes of the sorts of things that you said and the sort of rhetoric that you put out into the world and distilled that into an action, what do you think that action would be? I am a humanist. I am a writer. I like to believe that, as angry as I often am made by politics, the thing that most informs me is compassion. The thing that most drives me is the belief in myself and the belief in other people and a fundamental empathetic core that makes me want to make the world a better place. And I would like to believe that if someone distilled my messages into one central thesis, into one overarching, loose philosophy, that they would be moved to actions that are benevolent, that come from a place of care, and that try to make the world a better place. Maybe they wouldn't succeed, but I would want people to feel like they are going to do something that is kind. They are going to go and help their community in some way. They're going to go and help someone in need. That would be what I would want the central takeaway from the sorts of things that I write and the sorts of things that I say and do to be. I would want people to not be moored by tradition and to not be so focused on other people's ideas and the world of yesterday that they lose sight of something benevolent and something good and something kind. And I think that if you look at my videos that do not talk about choose your own adventures or jump chains or other silly things like that, that bring me joy, that bring me happiness on a personal level, but if you look at the sorts of statements that I make about the world and about this epoch in history that we're in, that we will find something benevolence there, that we will find something thoughtful and humanistic and something that leaves us wanting to make tomorrow a better day than today. When I vote in November, I am going to be doing so from a place of compassion, from a place of humanism, and from a place of hope. And I'm going to be voting against someone who I think, if they were in power, their legacy would be one of devastation, danger, harm, and divisiveness. And I'm going to be voting against someone who I personally think it would be fair to call a stochastic terrorist. After all of the things that you've seen today, I think I'm going to leave it a bit ambiguous as to who that is. Or, well, maybe not ambiguous. I think that there is nothing subtle about this message. I'm going to leave it unstated as to who I think that that person is of the two people who have the strongest likelihood of winning in November. But I am going to go ahead and leave off with a message of, hey, be thoughtful about the things that you say and think about the rhetoric of the people who most inspire you, the people you most believe in, and ask yourself, do you think that those individuals are people who are motivating you to be a better person in some way? Or do you think that they're feeding into your fears? Do you think that they're trying to feed on your energies and trying to make the world just a little bit less of a united, cohesive place? I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I know that it was definitely a departure from some of my other videos, but I enjoyed making it. I want to get back into making something vaguely akin to video essays, and I definitely want to talk about topics like this and other communicative areas, things that talk about and touch on rhetoric and stuff like that in the future. So we'll definitely see what sort of a reception this video gets. That said, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I cannot wait to see what you all think and to talk to you all in the future. Bye bye!